Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, with our great friend of the channel, Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Michael. Good to see you today.
Nice to see you as well. So I saw a YouTube video from a gentleman named Manny Koshman. Not sure you know who he is. If you don't,
Yep.
he's the guy with the great car collection.
And a real estate guy.
No, absolutely. And a real estate guy. It's just the cars are what most people remember. He's very much commercial office, that retail spot. So great investor. The reason I brought up Manny today is he put out a video that I thought was pretty cool. It's like 7-8 minutes. It talked about blueprint to success. How he made his first billion or something like that. But I want to key on blueprint to success because your story is amazing. It's kind of the American dream. All right, you graduate high school, you serve in the military, you come back, you get married, have some kids, and then you go off on your own, truck in a toolbox, and then magic happens.
Yeah, no college, no backing, no money. Nobody in my family were entrepreneurs. Just self-education and hard work.
Exactly. So I want to hear about Greg Dickerson's blueprint to success. Somebody out there is hungry, wanting to learn, and again, you have hundreds of hours on a playlist here. So curious what your blueprint to success would be.
Yeah. And they can go back and watch that video for the actual story, because we've talked about it multiple times on the channel. Truck in a toolbox is, the step-by-step. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals were, number one, making a decision what it was I wanted to do. That's first and foremost. You got to have desire. I mean, that's where it all starts. And, I talk about Think and Grow Rich a lot. And he talks about the secret of that book. It's desire. You have to want it. And, a lot of people say, oh, I want my own business, or, I want to be wealthy, or, I want to do whatever. And then, I always ask them, well, do you really? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, but do you really want it? Because if you do, you'll be willing to do whatever it takes, morally, legally, ethically, to achieve that goal, to reach the results that you're looking for, whatever it is, spiritually, mentally, physically, business. There's sacrifice that you have to give. And that's what a lot of people, especially younger people these days, don't comprehend or understand delayed gratification. Everybody wants it now. We live in this instant world, and it takes time. You have to sacrifice to get to your goals, and things happen a lot faster nowadays, in the world that we're in, of information and technology and finance and everything that just wasn't around when you and I were coming up. So you can fast track a lot of these things, but at the end of the day, number one, it takes desire. And then when you make that commitment, when you decide what it is you want to do, then what you do is you solve problems, right? Where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. And I was in an area, I bought a house, I was trying to get work done on the house, and nobody would call me back. Problem. So I'm like, wait a minute. So I started talking to other people, like, oh yeah, everybody's so busy they won't even call you back. So I set up a business idea, said, hey, I'm going to create a company that solves this problem. And on my business card, my tagline was, we will call you back.
It was that simple.
My neighbor told me, he says, look, if you call people back, if you show up and do what you say you're going to do, you'll be all as busy as you want to be. So that's what I did. My goal was to set up a business, return phone calls, do what I say I'm going to do, show up when I say I'm going to show up. And then when I started hiring employees, my whole goal was, if I can keep them busy, everybody will be good and will be profitable. So my main purpose in life was to keep people busy. So I turned into a salesperson, and I was on the road all day, every day. I'd show up at your house. I'd give you an estimate, handwritten right there on the spot, because they didn't have smartphones and apps and all that back then, like you do now. There's no excuse now. You can type up an estimate right there on the job site and have it texted to the people. And it's right there in their inbox, and they can click and pay and everything right there through, the phone nowadays. So the other thing is, as I was growing, so I had to continue to educate myself, on the industry I was in, on running a business and operating and growing and, leading, delegating, motivating. And as I grew, I was being asked to do things I didn't know how to do from a job standpoint, like build houses, do bigger projects, things like that. I started out as a handyman, remodeling contractor. And, I knew how to do some things, but I didn't know how to do all of it. So if there was something somebody wanted me to do that I didn't know how to do, I would go hire somebody who was an expert at that. And that's what they did their entire career, long before I ever showed up. And I hired them, brought them in, and I let them do it. And it started like in the field. I needed a carpenter because I didn't know how to frame a house, so I hired a carpenter that could frame these additions. And then, I needed somebody that knew how to like do electrical and do plumbing. So I hired those guys. And I needed people who knew how to trim, and I hired them. And then when I wanted to start building houses and buildings, I went to the largest company in the area, that had been there for 10, 15 years before me, building hundreds of $1 million homes in the area. And I hired their top people. I hired their vice president. I hired their head of design. I hired their top superintendents, to come work for me. And people are like, well, why would somebody leave a company like that? It's been around forever to come, to some new company. And it's because of the opportunity, that I gave them to come in and build an organization with me, that was just different, that was run the way they thought it should be run, so they could be entrepreneurial within the umbrella of what I was doing. And then I learned from all of them as I went along. So, the key is desire, find a problem you can solve, educate yourself. And if there's something you don't know how to do, hire people that are experts at it, bring them in, let them do their job and learn from them. And then as I grew into the investment world, same thing. I found people that were doing things that I wanted to do, that were where I wanted to be. And I went and did work for them and with them and learned from them through the process. So that's really it in a nutshell in terms of how it progressed.
Yeah. Again, it all starts with desire, a decision. There's a lot of wants today. I mean, I see it all the time, just kind of that almost sugar high. There are very few decisions, right? Because again, the path to a better financial future is actually pretty well run, worn out. It's not like magic beans or unicorns or anything, but it takes work. It takes commitment. It takes bumps and bruises, getting off your ass when you get knocked down. And it's slower than we all want, right? The whole get rich quick, the easy button, it doesn't exist.
Well, it does. I mean, there's some of it out there. I mean, we've seen it with
Okay.
crypto, we've seen it
Yeah.
with stocks, you can see it with internet companies. I mean, there are some
Yeah.
that do work, but at the end of the day, you got to know something. You've got to, educate yourself, and you've got to take action. But there are, and there have been some ways, to where it happens, overnight. But more often than not, it takes more hard work, dedication, delayed gratification, investment. And when I say deciding, I tell people the hardest thing to do is to decide what it is you want to do. That's the hardest thing. And then and the reason it is because once you decide, well, then you got to do something about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why it's hard, because once you make that decision and that commitment, now it's time to take action. And most people just don't want to do that. They want to, think about it and feel like they want to, but they don't want to put the work in, and the sacrifice to do it. And that can be anything. I mean, if you look at all the greatest athletes of all time, they work extremely hard. The stories of Michael Jordan and the practice that he put in and the constant, development. He was the best that there ever was, but he worked harder than almost everybody else. Tiger, when he was at his peak, same thing. Even now, the work ethic that he has and things like that. I mean, you'll find that over and over and over. And in business, with a lot of the most successful people you can find, and smartest people on the planet, they're still constantly learning, constantly developing, constantly, building and growing and things like that. And you just have to be willing to do that. And instead of the other things, if you want to lose weight, you got to stop eating cupcakes, right? It's just at the end of the day, that's where it starts. You got to make that sacrifice.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to really differentiate two words that you said: decision, and then you follow that up with commitment. I want to talk about those because it really is the marriage of those two that leads you down the path. So when you say decision, let's talk about that more. What does that mean to you when you say I decide?
Yeah. So, that's where you make up your mind, I am going to do this thing, because there's you can do anything. There's a lot of different things to do. So you got to pick one and get after it. And that's another problem we have now. There's so many different things to do, but it's making that decision that, I'm not going to let this happen again, or I am going to make this happen. So those are the two things. People are pain and pleasure, right? So most people make a decision when they're in pain. I am not going to let this happen again. That's a decision you're making. I'm not going to do that. Or pleasure. I'm going to be here, because you've experienced something, or something's going to get you there, and you just make up your mind that that's what you're going to do. And then once you make that decision that you're going to do it, I mean, my mind's made up. I've decided that's what I'm going to do. And then you commit to what, the action that it takes to get there. But that decision, and everybody's been there where, what, my mind is made up. Nobody's going to change it. This is what I'm doing.
That's awesome. And then let's follow that up with commitment, because that's where I see lots of people fall down, is the commitment side, right? It's the consistent commitment. It's the, when you step back, you got to step in again. Let's talk about what commitment is to you.
Yeah. So that is, now that I've decided this is what I'm going to do, I've made my mind up. Now you got to take action, and you got to stay disciplined with that action, regardless of what happens. And a lot of people, again, instant gratification, they want it now. And if I don't get the result now, well, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work out for an hour, and then I'm going to weigh myself. Well, I didn't lose any weight. Forget that. No, you got to keep going, and you got to keep going. You got to keep at it. Like, I mean, my first year, I did $250,000 in revenues over a couple hundred jobs.
Wow.
I mean, it's just getting up every day and just keeping after it, no matter what happens. Sometimes you mess up, sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, but you just got to keep going, and you got to keep at it, and just keep putting that action in every single day, and building on things, and learning lessons, and, developing yourself and educating yourself. But staying committed to your goal. So you made the decision to do it. What is your goal? And just decide, and make that commitment. I'm not, it's like you resolve, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to stop till I get there. And even when you get there, you see how much further you can go, and you don't stop there, but you got to have that one goal. I'm just going to get here. And a lot of people have this 5-year plan, 10-year plan. What's your 1, 3, 5, and 10-year plan? You need a 1-year plan broken down into every month, every week, every day, every hour of the day.
I agree.
Forget the 5-year, 10-year. What are you going to do today to get you towards that next goal?
Yeah.
And that's really where it's at. Stay focused on the now. You want to have the vision, you want to have the goal, but you got to focus on what's important today to get there, and take those actions every day, and just don't let anything stop you. Just don't get up and say, oh man, it's raining outside and it's not pretty. I'm not going to go do this. I had 10 no's last week to, the estimates that I put out, or the sales I'm trying to make. What's the point in going forward? If you got 10 rejections, that's 10 no's closer to a yes, because you're just sorting. At the end of the day in sales, you're sorting, yeses and no's.
Yep.
And you got to get through those 10 no's to get that yes.
Amen to that. This is amazing. Where can people find you? Because you put out amazing stuff.
Yeah, gregdickerson.com. That's where all my info is, and social media links. Go check it out.
Awesome. Thanks, man.